Hey everybody, I just wanted to go over some basic operations of the Glock Model 17 pistol, and these operations are pretty much across the board for all intents and purposes for the rest of the Glock models. I also wanted to address a few misconceptions of this pistol. I have heard people say it is very unsafe because it does not possess any safeties, and the fact of the matter is that it actually does have a few safeties. You have the trigger safety, you have a firing pin safety, and a drop safety. So actually you have three safeties, and I'd also like to incorporate the user. The user should also have some sort of degree and aptitude of not putting your finger on the trigger when you're not ready to fire a round. Anyhow, as you can see, this is an old Glock Model 17. This is a second generation. It is chambered 9mm. That's what the Glock Model 17 is chambered in. There obviously is a trigger safety right here, and if you look, you can see that that directly interferes with the frame right here. And as that gets depressed, you'll see how that little part goes away. And then the trigger is able to be pushed to the rear. And just so no one gets nervous, we do have an empty pistol here. As you can see, it's empty. And so once that trigger block goes away, now the trigger can be pulled to the rear. So what exactly happens when the trigger gets pulled to the rear? How do things, work inside of a Glock? Well, the action goes back when you load a round into the chamber. You insert your magazine and you rack the slide to load the round into the chamber. The slide grabs a round from the magazine and loads it into the chamber. So the second you do that, your firing pin kind of gets loaded, let's say 30%. It draws back about 30% of the way, so you're 30% of the way to being ready to fire. Now, because there's a firing pin block in this, there's a physical steel plunger in the way of that firing pin. Then when the trigger is actually drawn back, the trigger pushes back on the firing pin and then drops down, and the firing pin is allowed to slam forward, thus causing the primer to ignite. So let's take a closer look at that. For those who don't know or haven't experienced it, when you take apart a Glock, you safety check it, you remove the magazine, you pull the slide back like I showed you, and you inspect and visually and physically check that there is no round in the chamber. You pull the trigger to the rear, the firing pin will drop, and then this little piece of metal right here, kind of looks like a switch, you'll see it on either side, it's actually a bar that rides right inside here. And what that does is that stops the barrel from being able to travel forward, and the barrel, stops the slide from being able to travel forward. When you pull this down, it drops that little block in there, and then you're able to move the slide off. Now you do have to pull the trigger. That does make some people nervous. I can understand that. Anyhow, so here's your slide, here's your lower, and this little area right here, oops, sorry I bumped the camera, this little area right here, that's what interfaces with the actual firing pin. And here's your firing pin right here, here's the back of the firing pin. You'll notice that has a little 90-degree hook right there. And you can see the little wear areas on both parts. And as you pull the trigger, you'll see how it goes to the rear and then down. So as this is happening, you can see the firing pin right here. The firing pin loads up with spring pressure. There's spring pressure under this. And then that block goes down and allows the firing pin to slam forward into the primer. Now, remember how I said that there was a firing pin block? Well, that's right here, and this is the plunger. And you'll note what I was pulling on was this part right here. When you pull the trigger to the rear, you'll notice this little part goes up. That's what's interfacing with the firing pin block. It sits here, you pull the trigger, and then it rides up on top of the block and pushes it down. So let's take a closer look at that. Oh, I also like how the older Glocks, they didn't want spring stacking, so they had a nice flat recoil spring. And now with the advent of, I believe, the Gen 4 and Gen 5, they both have coil springs, and they have variable rate coil springs. So they'll have a thick spring that goes over a portion of it, the recoil assembly, and then a shorter spring to go over a smaller section of the recoil rod. And what that does is, depending on what kind of ammo you're shooting, each spring will have different types of forces on them. But I kind of like this. I do really like this older style. Anyhow, I digress. So here's the barrel. Now remember how I said when this little switch is up for when you're taking the pistol apart, you'll see there's this little trough right here. And that little trough interfaces, see if I can get this right here. And that's what stops your barrel and your slide from traveling forward after recoil. Obviously the recoil spring slows it down, tries to slide the slide forward. This part of the barrel interacts with this piece of the takedown. The barrel obviously is fit into the slide, and that stops the whole assembly from going any further forward. Also, I want to talk a little bit about dwell time. Dwell time is, so your round goes off, bullet travels down the chamber. You want the pressure to go down a little bit. You want some time for that bullet to actually make it down the chamber. You'll notice on your Glocks when you start pulling it back, the barrel doesn't, you can pull it back probably 1/8 of an inch, and then your barrel will start tipping down. Your barrel is interfacing with this ledge right here. There's a, let's say a, I don't know the exact angle, but let's just say a 45-degree angle cut right here. And you can see right here there's a 45-degree angle cut right here. And so the barrel sits like this. And then when you're able to shoot, that's how it's going down. So this drags the barrel down, thereby letting the slide get past this top part of the barrel, go back, grab in the next round, put it into the chamber, and then the slide can stop. And that's how that camming action works. Anyhow, oh yeah, and another interesting point, people wonder where the slide lockup really is on the Glock. It's here, this angle right here, and that angle corresponds to the top of the slide right here. And, believe it or not, the barrel and the front of the slide right in here. And I know it's kind of dark, I know you can't see. I don't have lighting, good lighting in here, unfortunately, so please bear with me. Anyhow, so that's pretty much the operations of these firearms in a basic sense. I'm not going to go at this at nauseum. Anyhow, so yeah, they're extremely safe. I like them. Having the pistol back together again, I just wanted to show you that dwell time a little bit. You can see as I start to pull this back, now you can see this area is exposed and the barrel actually drops out of the way of the slide. Let's see if we can zoom in on this a little. And now you can see the gap where the slide has now cleared the barrel. And that distance, and I just got done measuring it, is not an 1/8 inch, it's 200 thousandths. That distance right there. And that gives you enough dwell time, so when this action does open up and expend the spent casing, you're not getting a face full of debris. Because now the chamber pressure's dropped down low enough, most of the expanding gases have left the front of the muzzle. But anyhow, I just wanted to share this with you guys. This is just a real basic thing. I know I'll probably get people saying I didn't cover this or that or whatever. It's just a real basic thing. I didn't want to blow anyone's minds. Not that I know that much about these anyhow. I really, ever since these pistols have been available and that I have known about them, I have really appreciated them. I think that the manufacturing processes they use for these is really interesting, and I really can appreciate what Gaston Glock did when he designed this. Anyhow, I hope you guys have a good day, and remember, loose is fast, brakes only slow you down, and shotguns have a wider spread. Take care.